Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Our Brains Hurt, and thank you so much for hanging out with us again. Our Brains Hurt podcast is presenting Diesel Boy at the Pie Shop in Washington, D.C. this Saturday, July 6th, with special guests American Television, Over Our Eyes, and 40 Reps. It's going to be a rad show. This is Diesel Boy's first trip to the East Coast in 2 decades. Get your tickets at pieshopdc.com. Come on out, hang out with us, drink with us, party, watch Diesel Boy, and 3 other amazing bands. That's this Saturday, July 6th at the Pie Shop in DC. Pieshopdc.com for tickets. Come hang out. Be sure to check us out at ourbrainshurt.com and on all social media at ourbrainshurts. That's the business. Now, let's get to the show.
Well, they needed a jingle for their stupid little show, so they called up the Jasons and we said, fuck no. Then they called us again and they gave us $20 and we wrote them a song that said, your podcast sucks. Then they gave us more money and they asked us really nice and we finally gave in and we said, alright, I'll write you a song, but it's gonna be a clone of a Screeching Weasel song that we heard a while ago. So we wrote them a jingle and it sounded really rad. It was the best little jingle that their pockets ever had, but the file got corrupted and the email didn't work. Now they're stuck without a jingle singing Our Brains Hurt. Our brains hurt, our brains hurt, our brains hurt. Our brains hurt, our brains hurt, our brains hurt. Our brains hurt, our brains hurt, our brains hurt. Our brains hurt, our brains hurt, our brains hurt. In a very non-copyright infringing sort of way.
So everybody should buy tickets for July 6th, which is a few days from now when you're listening to this podcast. Diesel Boy hitting the East Coast for the first time in like 2 decades.
Yeah, it'll be in less when you're listening to this podcast. It'll be less than a week. It'll be 6 days into the future.
What the fuck are you waiting for? Buy
Come
your
hang
goddamn
out with
tickets.
us. Yeah, come hang out with us and American Television and Over Our Eyes and 40 Reps. And if you don't know who any of those bands are, then fuck you.
Yeah, they're 3 of the best bands in the Mid-Atlantic right now.
Yeah,
No exaggeration.
not at all. Like,
yeah. Possibly the East Coast.
yeah,
like
yeah, for real.
Seriously.
Like 3 of the best, like up and coming bands, period, on the East Coast.
You're gonna have fun.
I promise you.
Yeah. And if you want to support little old me, I'm in a band now called The Blanks. You can check us out at facebook.com/theblankspunkrock.
They're pretty good.
We're pretty
I know them.
But yeah, tonight we're talking to Chris Rest,
Oh,
Lagwagon.
yeah. RKL, Lagwagon.
Yeah. Just 2 of the most influential bands of all time. No big deal.
Played with No Use for Name for a little while.
Did he? I did not know that.
He did. He never recorded, but it was, yeah.
Okay.
He was also in a band called The Other with Bomber from RKL. That's pretty rad. Who has 1 album. You should listen to it if you never
It's a
have.
really good album.
Fucking good.
I'll have
Yeah.
to ask him about that too.
Yeah, I'm definitely asking him questions about that album.
Cool. Well, how about I just let him in?
Yep, let's do it.
Let's do it. How you doing? Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
How was the Lagwagon, the last few weeks, the Lagwagon tour?
That was pretty crazy. I mean, we flew to Madrid for just 1 show, and then we flew back to Toronto, and then did some Canadian stuff. That was cool. The Green Day show, we played after Green Day, but they were like 2 football fields away facing us. So we could kind of see them playing and we could hear them pretty well. They had pyro and all this stuff. And then as soon as they were done, it was time for us to play. And we just saw this river of people leaving the area. But I mean, there's still a lot of people that stuck around to see us.
Was that in Madrid or was that in Canada?
It was Madrid.
Madrid.
That was the where we went to Madrid for that particular thing.
We did a little intro on you already. I mean, our listeners know who Chris Rest is.
Oh, good.
I want to ask, basically, where did you grow up and how did you get into punk rock in the first place? How did it all start?
I grew up in Southern California, and then when I was about, I think, 10 or 11, moved to Santa Barbara. And Santa Barbara is where I discovered punk rock, sort of, but I didn't have any older siblings that could turn me on to cool stuff. So I used to buy records just from the album covers that looked cool. And so,
I remember those days.
Yeah, but the the first record I think I bought, I was all into like science fiction stuff. I bought an ELO record, which I actually liked. And I bought Boston because it had like the crazy spaceship
Yeah.
thing on it. But then I remember I bought Bat Out of Hell. What's his name? Meatloaf.
Yeah.
And I was super disappointed, but I was like the greatest album cover ever. And I was like, I thought that was going to be just pure heavy metal. And
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate Meatloaf now, but at the time I was completely let down. I thought that was a blatant misrepresentation of the contents of that record. But one that I did score on, I bought a Molly Hatchet record because, you know, they always have that Viking with some kind of decapitation device. And I was pretty stoked on the Molly Hatchet record. But the first punk record I ever heard was London Calling because some guy was renting a room from my parents and he had a record collection. I was just going through his records. And I had no idea that The Clash was a punk band, but I did like, I mean, that album cover's awesome. And I really liked that record, and I had no idea that was punk rock. I had only seen a couple things on TV about punk rock, and one of them was some London club, and they showed punk rockers like full on mohawks and safety pins through their cheeks, and they were eating red jello off of baby dolls. And I was, you know, being 13 years old, I thought it was disgusting. And I said, that's definitely not for me. And so, but then, you know, I was into Devo a lot. And when I discovered the Surf Punks, I thought that was punk rock, and the B-52s. So I thought Devo, the Surf Punks, and the B-52s were punk rock. So
those early records, they kind of were, especially Devo.
The Devo, yeah, for sure.
That first B-52s record is fucking badass still.
Yeah.
I love that.
I actually was into the Talking Heads first record. The first actual, so when it wasn't until junior high school where I actually had some friends that knew about punk rock. And the first record that we all kind of bought together, I think, was Group Sex Circle Jerks record. And then I think I got a DK's record, In God We Trust, and then Black Flag. And I remember the first time it was Damaged. The first time I heard Damaged, I was like, I don't think I'm into this, but it grew on me.
Yeah, that's definitely a harder record to get into when you were like super young, unless you like came from seeing them live.
Oh yeah,
when you were a kid. That different story then. But being an East Coaster, I remember the same feeling from listening to that record for the first time. I was like, why do people like this? And I learned, obviously, but
yeah, I mean, I loved that Group Sex record, and also, yeah, the Nevermind the Bollocks was definitely probably might have been the first record we bought actually. But we were also into the Police a lot, and they were pretty punk rock when they first started out.
Yeah,
they still have a few records that are just badass. I still listen to a lot actually.
Yeah,
great band.
Yeah.
The first show I ever went to was a DOA show, and my parents took me. At this point, we used to we would get button-up shirts from the thrift store and use a permanent marker and draw stuff on them. And you know, I was still pretty small. I was probably 5'4" or something, and I went into the pit and instantly got an elbow to the nose, and my nose was just gushing blood. And instead of like getting toilet paper, I just let it go down the front of my shirt, and all these people are just like freaking out on me. It's this little kid just covered in blood. And I thought that was pretty punk rock.
How old were you at that time?
By then I was probably 14, almost 15. I remember the first real punk rocker I ever saw in real life was we went to go see the Knack at this big place on UCSB campus. And it was just a regular, I mean, I thought I heard them all the time on FM radio. I didn't know that they sort of had punk rock roots either, but there was a band opening for them called the Rubber City Rebels, which were kind of a punk band. And this one guy, he was one of Santa Barbara's first punk rockers. His name was Chris Syphilis, and he was in a band called the Strap On Dicks. He was there, and his hair was all crazy, and he was wearing a leather jacket, and on the back in huge block letters, it said "fuck the knack," and I was like totally offended by that. But I mean, I've done some research about that. When My Sharona came out, a lot of the people that were into the knack totally felt betrayed because that was a mega hit, and before that they were kind of like an underground band, I think.
So how did you go from that kid to RKL? Like how did that journey kind of?
Okay, so my first instrument was piano. My mom taught me how to play some piano, and I was taking regular lessons from just the stupid piano lessons. And but once again, my parents rented, or actually no, this was just a visiting friend who was a musician who actually had like a record out on, I don't know, he might have put it out himself, but I remember him from when I was really young, and he always played like boogie woogie piano, and he played guitar and stuff. And he showed me how to play boogie woogie stuff on the piano. And since I had already played piano for quite a few years, I instantly was stoked on that. And I was able to improvise and play just like basic 12 bar kind of boogie woogie stuff and improvise with scales. And I was like, wow, this is like, was totally enlightening to me that you could actually, improvise on the piano. And then shortly after that, I came home from school one day and someone was setting up a drum kit right in our foyer of our house. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. And I was watching him set it up. And he goes, yeah, you like it? And I go, yeah, I like it. And he goes, it's yours. And so it was like some used Korean kit. But so then I started playing drums. I took some lessons. And so I had piano and then drums. And my dad had been a guitar player his whole life and mandolin, but he always tried to get me to play acoustic guitar. And when you're a little kid and you don't have calluses, it's not the sound or the feeling that you want from a guitar. And so now, once again, we, through someone that was renting a room from my parents, they had an electric guitar. And I was in his room one time and he let me play it through the amp. And I was like, instantly tried to play Smoke on the Water. It's the first thing that most people play. And I figured that out on the low E string. I think it's actually an A, but so then I said, Mom, I want an electric guitar. And so that once I got an electric guitar, then I had electric guitar and drums in my room. And me and my friends would make up songs, and we would just, one friend would be right next to the boom box recording vocals, whatever, just making stuff up. And then I'd usually play guitar and the other friend would play drums. And we had a bunch of songs that we made up. I actually still have I think 3 songs from pretty far back that was awesome. Using that method of recording. And so that was pre RKL. We kind of made up some band names, but we were never really a band. Mm-hmm. And then when I started junior high school, that's when I met my other friends that actually knew a little bit about punk rock, and we started doing the same thing, but our songs were starting to sound a little more punk rock, and we called ourselves the Rats, I think.
Nice.
And RATZ.
Hell yeah.
Edgy.
But it's funny because they were twins and I looked a lot like them. So one of our teachers said, you guys should be called the Clones. I was like, wow, that's kind of a good name. But so shortly after that, I moved to another little part of Santa Barbara area called Summerland. It was this rental this is right after my parents split up. Mm-hmm. And my dad went back down to Southern California, and my mom rented this house like right near the beach in Summerland. and that's where I met Bomber. And it was funny because so Bomber had already had a little bit of experience on drums. I think one of the guys from Ugly Kid Joe was friends with his sister or something like that, and so he learned some beats on that guy's kit. And so, I had my friends from junior high come over, and we would jam, and Bomber would be like, "Hey, let me check out the drums for a bit," and like he was immediately like shredding my friend, and so my friend would always get all pissed. and so then so it was pretty obvious that Bomber was really talented. And it was funny because then I moved again to another little part of Santa Barbara called Carpinteria, and so did Bomber's mom move to Carpinteria, and so he lived like a block away from me down there. And that was just like a year later. So we were like following each other. And he would, come over to my house, and we kind of had like three songs or so that we would go through, just guitar and drums. And then we were about to start high school. And I think Bomber was a year ahead of me. So he had already gone to Ventura High School for 1 year. But he decided to go to Santa Barbara High School, where I was going. And so the summer before I started high school, Bomber was hanging out at my house a lot and I lived in Montecito, which is like a kind of a ritzy part of Santa Barbara, but we lived in this crappy rental house. And I had my drums set up in there. And so we were starting to get serious about trying to form a band. And said, well, I think, we had a bass player. This little kid named Nathan was playing bass. He was he was younger than me. He was tiny. And he was just a little surf rat, and he reluctantly let Bomber cut his hair off. And I remember he had tears in his eyes. Bomber always wanted to cut everybody's hair off. He always wanted to either have a mohawk or a skinhead. And so that kid didn't last in the band very long. I think we played like one party with him. But then my uncle Dave, my uncle was only 2 years older than me. He was living with us at the time. He took over on bass. And so we go, well, I think we need a second guitar player. So we asked,
who's singing at this point? Are you singing?
We didn't have a singer yet.
Okay, gotcha.
So I asked Joey Cape if he wanted to play guitar, because I knew him from soccer, and I had heard that he had been playing guitar for several years already. So yeah, I think this guy Joey has an electric guitar, and he's been playing a while. I think he'd be a good choice. And so Joey, someone got him on the phone, and he said, only if my friend Jason can be the singer. And I knew Jason from soccer as well. And Jason already had like a reputation of being a crazy person. Like he used to drink a glass of milk, throw it up into the glass and say, thank you, I'll have another, and then drink it again. And he had this trick where he would take like a necklace, like a chain necklace, and snort it up his nose.
Oh, he's one of those
cough
guys.
it out, and so he'd be like, mental floss or something.
I had a friend who used to do that too. I don't know why people who do that like to do that. It's a weird trick.
Yeah. And so like we played like a Wasted Youth song. I think we played Problem Child, and we played Bloodstains, and we had a couple a couple original songs. And the way I remember it, I thought Joey thought we sucked because he was into metal, and we were like pretty bad thrash punk band. But Joey's story is that he could never make it to practice because he was always grounded. So I don't know which one is the truth. Back then, I mean, it's all kind of blur, but it wasn't too long before we played some parties and stuff, and we were going to be called Social Revolt. That was the name we decided on.
Gotcha.
And someone said, "Oh, those guys will never amount to anything. They're just a bunch of rich boys on acid." And because Jason's dad, I mean, he wasn't filthy rich, but he was a restaurant owner,
Gotcha.
And he was the only one that had money. His family. Bomber was from a broken home, and my dad was long gone. My mom was totally struggling raising me and my sister, and my uncle was living with us, and he didn't work. He was just like us. He was just one of us, and yeah, we were just playing shows as a 4-piece. We are not shows, but parties, and
Right.
usually the cops would come. I don't know how many we played before we actually got our first show, which was with Agent Orange, but it wasn't too long. And I remember I had a freshly shaved head because Bomber said, I'll cut your hair. I'll cut your hair. You need a haircut. And so, I said, I want it finger length. So we used to, put your hand here and then cut the hair that was sticking out. And that was like a safe length. But he did it without the fingers. And so it was just like some bald spots and scissor lines. He goes, well, we got to shave it now. And so he like shaved half of my head with no shaving cream with some old Bic razor.
Oh,
and
man.
my head was bleeding. And I said, you have to stop. It hurts too. And so like we had school the next day. And I remember my mom's like came in the room in the morning and she's like, time to get up for school. And I was in a sleeping bag, sleeping on the floor. And I like pulled the sleeping bag down. She went, Bomber! And Bomber like jumped out the window. Instead of going to school, I went to the barber and he shaved my head. And then I wore a bandana for the first few days. Cool. But then that was like shortly after that, we had that Agent Orange show. That was our first real show. I think we probably got 20-minute set. I don't remember much about it. I don't think there was that many people when we played, but that was at the Goleta Community Center, which is like a pretty horrible sounding room. But I've seen several bands there. That's where I went to my first punk show.
Nice.
Yeah. But that's how RKL started. And it was, mostly because of Bomber and me. And then Jason kind of happened into it through Joey Cape.
Hey guys, Trev from the Struggling Artist Podcast, and I want to talk to you real quick about Struggling Artist Record Club. The Struggling Artist Record Club is a vinyl record subscription service where I hunt and curate the best punk and punk-adjacent music out there and mail their record to your door each and every month. Imagine finding your new favorite band from across the country without ever having to leave the house. It doesn't get much better than that. The excitement of discovering new music just got that much easier. As a member of the Struggling Artist Record Club, you are going to receive some of the best music you've ever heard from bands you may never even heard of. Whether you've been collecting records for years or just starting out, the Struggling Artist Record Club is designed specifically for you. And right now, all new members get a Struggling Artist Record Club exclusive along with the monthly selection. So head to strugglingartistrecordclub.com, pick a membership, and start building that collection today.
So that was like your first band, like the progression of whatever you guys called yourself first up until RKL. There wasn't anything else for you previous.
Just some stuff that I did at junior high school. I played the first time I played guitar in front of people was, junior high school, just playing for the school stuff. But the first time I played drums in front of people was actually way before that. And my dad had some big party at our house, and they had this band called The Tan played, and they were kind of like a surfy, groovy party band, And they heard me playing drums upstairs, like before the party started, and they asked me if I wanted to play a song with them. So I played drums with them, like on one song. But I was like so nervous, I wouldn't hit the cymbals, so they kept hitting the cymbals for me.
So your parents were supportive of you playing music, it sounds like.
Yeah, my dad always wanted me to play guitar, but every time I tried, it was just like hurt my fingers and didn't sound rad. But my mom, I showed me piano, and I feel like I picked it up pretty easily. I didn't have very good vision, and I remember I would just memorize the songs, and so like my piano teacher would be like, "You didn't turn the page," and I'd be, "Oh yeah." Like, because I memorized the whole thing.
this is based off of something that Barry told us.
Yeah.
Do you attribute Bomber to you becoming the guitarist you are, or
No,
aside from
I had
yourself,
been,
obviously?
no, he didn't. I mean, okay, I was pretty decent guitar player by the time we started RKL, at least for a 15-year-old kid, I think at the time. I mean, now there's 15-year-old kids that are virtuosos, but
Right.
back then it was kind of rare, I think. And I definitely wasn't a virtuoso, but I could, play some Chuck Berry riffs and kind of hold my own. And Bomber, see that I attribute Bomber to RKL being the tight unit that it was. Like he used to make us practice in the dark. Like we'd go into the practice space and shut off the lights and and so we had to, because he was like, quit looking at your fingers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. 'Cause
Yeah,
what
that's a Barry.
Barry
Yeah.
told us.
And his, once Bomber really started writing a lot of the music, like with the Rock and Roll Nightmare era, those songs definitely escalated all of our playing because they were so technical and everything was so tight and you couldn't just be sloppy thrash band. And
Right.
most of the bands we played with back then were sloppy thrash bands. Like when we toured the States, nearly every band that we played with was horrible. But
Yeah.
there were some exceptions. I mean, we played some shows with Subhumans on one of those early tours, and we played a show with Scream at the CBGB Sunday matinee
Nice.
show. Yeah, and they were awesome. Like,
Yeah.
but most of the thrash bands that we played with were just the worst. Like,
Yeah.
just and I was like, God. And so we were like, wow, we're pretty good.
It sounds like it could be a nightmare having somebody like that in your band, but like I wish I would have had somebody like that in the bands I grew up playing, because I would have gotten to the point way quicker than I did.
Yeah, I mean, the people have, I mean, it's so much easier to get free information now if you want to learn how to play any instrument, with YouTube. It's
Right.
ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
I know that a lot in the 80s, people had those, VHS tapes, and most of them were pretty bad. But that was like, besides that and tabs from the back of magazines, that was your only key to shred, or taking lessons from somebody.
Yeah.
And everyone said, "Oh, I would just put on a record and slow it down and to learn these songs, and everything's all tuned down and crappy." And so now you can with YouTube, I use it all the time with some I teach guitar online, and so if someone asks me to teach them a song that I don't know, I just go on YouTube and listen to it slowed down, and I can just go note by note and
Right.
if I need to, and it's such an awesome resource.
When did you guys go up to the Bay Area?
Okay, so let's see. I don't know
'Cause
what
that's when
year
Joe
it was.
joined you guys as a bass.
Yeah, that was when we moved up there, but
Yeah.
so things were getting pretty stale in Santa Barbara. Every show, like it was really hard to get real shows because Golden Voice was the only promoter that was doing shows in Santa Barbara then, and anytime we tried to play a party, it got broken up by the cops. Except for this one place in Isla Vista where UCSB is, called the Red Barn. You could rent that place out for $100, and you could even have a keg of beer. And so there was
nice.
potential to actually make money there. I don't think anyone ever made much money, but
Right.
it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it was getting to the point where we were not getting really barely any LA shows, just once in a while, or maybe Oxnard, but there was just too many bands. So someone went up to, I think it was Bomber, probably went up to San Francisco and said, "Hey, we got to go up there, and there's a couple of punk clubs up there, and we heard about this squatted abandoned beer vat called it was the Hams Brewery that was abandoned, and they called it the Vats. And MDC lived there and practiced there. DRI, some of the guys from DRI were there, and some other bands. And we went up there, and that's where we met Barry. And he was like at the Vats. We went up there with no show. And I think the next day, it might have been Christmas Eve, must have been 1983, maybe. DRI said, hey, we have a show at the Mabuhay Gardens tomorrow night. Do you want to play that show? And we said, of course. And so that was our first show up there. And then we started kind of making monthly trips up there to play Mabuhay or the Rock on Broadway. And then Balmer said, hey, I'm leaving Santa Barbara. I'm moving to San Francisco. And at that point, my mom and I and my sister were living on a boat in the Santa Barbara harbor, and that wasn't working out. And so my mom decided to go to nursing school in San Francisco. So somehow I ended up following Balmer up to San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
And Barry already lived there. So then it was me, Balmer, and Barry all living in San Francisco. Jason never moved up. He was like the king of Santa Barbara, or from Montecito. He was, Mr. Big Shot, Cito Rat.
Yeah.
And so,
well, how couldn't you be with the milk and the beads?
And so we didn't have a bass player. Let's see, how does that work out? Yeah, Vince, our bass player at the time, he joined when my uncle Dave quit, and he was in a band called Secret Service before that. And their logo was a SS, which was probably wouldn't fly these days. But, he quit at some point. I think it was when Balmer really started writing more technical songs, and Vince was like, "Man, that's not punk rock. Punk rock's supposed to be simple." And Balmer was influenced by. He had an older sister, so he grew up with like hard rock, and so he was using that influence mixed with punk rock to write these technical, like pretty intricate songs. And Vince didn't like the direction we were going with that, so he quit. And so we were looking for a bass player. We got this guy Ricky on bass, which lasted a few months. But he left the band right before we went to go record Rock and Roll Nightmare. And so Balmer ended up playing bass and drums on that record. So we had already toured the States twice at this point. Or no, is that right?
With your uncle on bass?
No, Vince played bass on
Okay.
both those tours, yeah. The first time was with Dr. No,
Nice.
I think. And then the second time, that was the tour where we ran into the Melvins on tour, and their tour had fallen apart. And so they ended up, I get the two tours mixed up because they were only like 9 months apart, but they were both pretty much disastrous.
Yeah.
And the second tour was the tour that Balmer got sick. He actually had hepatitis, and we got to the East Coast, and he flew home, and we had to go to our show in New York City. We were supposed to play with AOD, and we were just there with no drummer, and so we couldn't play. And I remember the guy who was our booking agent, Johnny Stiff. He goes, "You tell Bama I'm going to come out to California and kick his whole family's ass." But Balmer really was sick. I mean, we all thought he was just being dramatic. So he had hepatitis. He took my guitar, and he was holed up in his house with a 4-track recorder, and he wrote Rock and Roll Nightmare in like 1 month.
Wow.
And so we practiced it in Barry's bedroom over and over again, just guitars. And I think Balmer was playing bass mostly. And I think, Ricky was learning the songs too. And we actually played a really big show at the farm, San Francisco, with Ricky on bass. And I know that there's a video of that show. We were playing a few songs from Rock and Roll Nightmare before that record came out, before it was even recorded.
Yeah.
So then we came down to Santa Barbara to record that record, and I think Balmer played some of the drums with no scratch guitar or anything.
Wow.
And then I came in and played the guitars, and then Balmer with the bass on it, and Barry was in the band at that point. Barry was on the second US tour that we did, but I don't think he was on the first one. He wasn't on the first one. So that was the difference on those two tours. There's some animated short YouTube video of Buzz from the Melvins talking about that RKL tour. If you like search Melvins RKL, it's one of the first things that comes up. It's pretty funny. But yeah, we saw them. We ran into them somewhere, might have been Arizona, I can't remember, but they had Kiss spray painted and stenciled on the side of their van, and Balmer grew up with Kiss, and he's like, "Whoa, look at that!" Like, and like instantly, we saw them at like a rest stop or something. We're like, "Oh, what's your guys' deal?" And they're like, "Oh, we're from Portland, and our tour fell through," and that's how we bonded, was because of that Kiss van. That Kiss van got auctioned off on eBay for like $70,000 because
Oh, really? Wow.
they say that there was Kurt Cobain art on the side of the van. I thought I remembered Balmer drawing the Kiss faces on the side of the van, but this is where there's some discrepancies, and the guys in the Melvins swear that Kurt drew those faces. But I remember Balmer drawing them, and it looks like Balmer's drawing artwork to me, so I don't know.
It should be worth more if Balmer drew it.
Yeah.
What was Balmer's relationship with Jason like?
They clashed a lot.
Yeah.
They didn't hang out much together except for when we were playing. And,
right.
The band would practice all the time. That's how we became what we were. But Jason would just come up right before a show and do one practice with us probably. And they clashed a lot. I mean, they were both just crazy characters and very type A personalities, both of them, and opposites kind of.
Mm-hmm. What's it like now playing in RKL without either of them?
I mean, we did the without Balmer thing for a long time, but yeah, without Jason, I mean, the first time we did it without Jason was when our friend Dead Ted died, and we did this RKL karaoke thing where people would just sign up to sing songs, and we just had like a big list of songs, and we had probably like 6 or 7 people come up and sing RKL songs, and someone, people were like, "You guys got to keep doing that." And so we ended up using our friend Damien, and we did the RK Aliens. We did a handful of shows as the RK Aliens. And we actually went out to Vitoria in Spain and played this big festival with that lineup. And it was with Chris Flippin on guitar and my friend Boz on drums. Boz played in The Other, and he played in King City, my other band I was in. He played with Mad Caddies. He tours with Mad Caddies now. And we went, but before that, like, we had a couple of lineups. We put this makeshift RKL together because they asked RKL to play the opening of the skate park in Santa Barbara. And, we never thought, for one, that the city of Santa Barbara would ask RKL to play a show. And and we never thought there would be a skate park in Santa Barbara. So it was like this unbelievable thing that we couldn't pass up.
Right.
So that was with Balmer on bass and Jason singing, and Derek Plord on drums, and Chris. Actually, no, that show actually was before Balmer started playing with us. It was Derek and me and Jason, and then our friend Todd on bass and some other guy named Joe on guitar. And we just did it for that one thing. And I think we might have played one tiny show at a bar that was a complete disaster. It turned into practically a riot.
I believe there's YouTube videos of both of those events. I know I've seen the skate park one.
Yeah. But then we had a lineup with Derek on drums and Bomber on bass and Jason singing and Chris flipping on guitar that we played probably for almost a year with that lineup. We played a punk rock bowling show at the Double Down. And that, or no, it wasn't the Double Down. I don't know where it was, but we had a bowling team and we were doing okay because Jason was an excellent bowler. He was pretty much good at everything, but we were nearing the last frame of one of our first games and he had thrown all strikes. And this was like practically almost the last frame. And he threw a strike, but then he was on the ground and his knee had been like, I don't know, somehow went to the side of his leg and he was like, ah, and so they had to go. That was the end of our bowling team. And we had to play that night. So he played, there's a video of that show too, where Jason's sitting on a bar stool and Bomber's playing bass. So
I've seen that one too.
show.
Yeah.
So we went through quite a few different lineups later when we got Joe back playing bass and, you know, I can't remember what Bomber was doing. And so we had Chris flipping on guitar and Derek Plord on drums and Joe on bass and Jason singing and me. So that lineup was pretty tough. It was pretty good. And we played quite a few shows around the West Coast with that lineup. Never went outside of the country. And then Derek went through some hard times and then we got Boz on drums for a while. And then everything kind of fell apart and then Jason died and that's that. But we recorded we did that 2 years in a row. We played that Malt Soda Bash thing and Scooter from Malt Soda recorded both of those shows and kind of released it as a double DVD thing.
What about those songs that are on the end of that?
The
that
demo
live...
songs.
Yeah, that never got released. But
that was all like 1996. We had been recording all this music and we wanted Jason to sing on these demos, but Jason was kind of busy. He was strung out on drugs at that point, pretty bad. And nothing was really happening. And we were thinking about getting another singer. And then Dave got asked to join Lagwagon. And so everything just fell apart. And then a couple of years later, Jason kind of got his shit together and put vocals on it. Him and that guy, Todd, who played bass with us at the skate park, went in and worked out all these. That's why there's so many like vocal harmonies on that record because Todd was a pretty talented dude. And so Jason did that on his own. He did all those vocals on his own. And that's how we ended up with that demo. But it was kind of like, so that was, I don't know, probably 2002 or 3, I guess. And so we ended up playing a couple of those songs live, but never ended up on any record. Like we never re-recorded them in a studio as a band.
You think any of them will resurface now in possible future shows?
I like playing that Maiden Galita song.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Does the current lineup have any plans on coming out to the East Coast?
We want to do Europe next, and that's been our focus because, you know, when in 88, 89, we went there, you know, 2 years in a row and hammered Europe, and it was like that was our main fan base is there, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely would love to come out back east.
And that Live in a Dive record that you put out recently, that was from 89 in Europe, correct?
Yeah.
And that's such a great, the production on that is so good. It's
cool.
It's such a great record. I listen to it.
A lot of people still like the first one better, the Berlin record, 88. I kind of ruined that record because I was there in the studio and they had these room mics set up, but the room was really echoey and horrible. but I'm like, oh, we got to use these room mics. We have these, we have them. We should use them. And natural reverb. That's so cool. And it ended up making the whole thing kind of sound washy and far away. But the thing that's cool about it is you can really hear Bomber's drumming, and the bass is there, and it's all there. So, I mean, we were a pretty good tight unit at that point. I was near the end of the tour.
Yeah.
We recorded a previous show in a smaller room that actually I think came out really good. But Bomber said, I was sick that night. We can't use that recording. And they recorded over it to do the Live in Berlin record.
Okay.
And I wish we had that because I think it was a better show and it probably sounded better.
Yeah, we had Joe on the podcast. What was it, like a year and a couple months ago? It was like last winter.
Something like that.
And he was telling us that like he was so young that when he went to Europe with you guys, was it Bomber? Somebody had to adopt
Barry had to be
Barry.
his legal guardian.
Barry basically had to adopt him.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a photo of his parents dropping him off at the airport. Or not drop, they were like came to the checkout counter and they took a photo of them and they do not look happy. They're like very traditional Portuguese parents.
He told us the only reason it happened is because the principal at his school basically talked his parents into it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
Nothing like that will ever happen again. No principal will ever talk any parents into letting their child go
to Europe with a band called Rich Kids on LSD.
Yeah, the principal talking to parents into letting him do that. That's wild.
Probably not.
Yeah, the 80s.
Yeah. Matt and I are both fans of The Other.
Big ones.
Yeah. So Matt, if you want to talk that up.
Well, I don't know about talking it up other than the fact that I love that record, but that I think the thing about that always gets my mind is because of like when I first realized that The Other was like you guys, because I had heard it in the 90s because of some comp and was like, oh, this band's pretty cool, but I had no idea that it was you guys.
Oh yeah, they put the fat comp. It was Hate Street Girl, I think, was on that one.
It was Honest Don's comp. I think it was Cafes and Bombs.
Oh, Cafes and Bombs. That's a cool one.
What ended up happening for me is because this is a little faux pas, I guess, but I am one of the people that actually likes Reactivate. I get it. It's not an RKL record.
It was like a demo, really, but overproduced demo.
Yeah, but The Other to me ended up becoming like I wanted more Bomber like vocals, and that's what The Other became to me. And so I really, really fell in love with that.
I mean,
record.
that record I'm still probably the favorite record that I ever played on for me, just because me and Boz rehearsed for that record every day, like almost every day for like 6 months. And so we were super well prepared for that. Ryan Green said, had us set up in the room and we just came in and played through the songs. And he's like, man, this is going to be so easy. And that recording just went like so smoothly, like he said. And the only thing that happened that was weird is I got bit by a spider while I was tracking guitars. I didn't really realize that. I kept going, what is that? I looked down and there's this big welt right under where my belt is. And it just turned into this pus volcano. It was gnarly.
What kind of spider was it? Do you know? Or
no, probably, I don't know, black widow or brown recluse or something. I don't know. But
did you get fever-like symptoms from it?
No, it was just gross. And it hurt. Yes, this Reactivate and that band are kind of related because that Reactivate is when we first got involved with Epitaph, and Bomber and Brett were the ones that decided that this band would be called RKL and not Slang. So Slang was like the funky, groovy band that we had before Reactivate. And we had just got Dave Ron in the band at that point, just barely. And so he wasn't even used to our songs yet. And then we're going to, go record this record. And so, and this was we went down there to record it during the LA riots. So we're in Hollywood during the LA riots, and the streets were closed, and there was military guys with machine guns on the corners. It was like full on curfew. Like you weren't allowed to be out driving around, and we would just drive right past them and nothing ever happened. I don't know why they didn't stop us. A van full of guys. It was like
because they knew magic was happening.
Yeah. That recording session was ridiculous. I mean, our engineer was on crack. And we recorded a bunch of those songs with Dave on drums, and then Bomber had like 2 or 3 more songs, and he went back with a different drummer, and Bomber ended up playing guitar and bass and on those songs with a different drummer. Jeff was playing drums. He was the original Slang drummer. He was really good. He is really good.
Yeah.
So that's why those 3 songs, like that song Insane, sounds different than the rest of the record, because Bomber played all the guitars on it and produced that part of the record. So it sounds totally different than the rest of the record. But so yeah, Bomber and Brett decided that recording, that Bomber was RKL, and that we should call the album an RKL record. Okay, so then that record came out, everyone hated it. We went on tour in Europe, and we were playing some shows with that lineup. Our first show when we landed in Germany was with NoFX, and we had no idea how big NoFX had gotten at this point.
Yeah.
And little Joe was wasted. He got there and instantly started drinking these German giant beers. He passed out in the van. We were like, dude, take it easy. He's like, I'm not drunk, I swear. And so Bomber drew Gene Simmons makeup with permanent marker on his face. And said, I'm not drunk, I swear, on his arm. And so, he gets up, a while after we arrive at this venue, and there's already kids around everywhere because this is a NoFX show. And everyone's pointing at him and laughing. He goes, yeah, it says, I'm not drunk, ha ha. But he didn't realize that he had Gene Simmons face makeup on. And so we were all cocky, oh, NoFX, they suck, because they didn't used to be that great. I mean, when they used to open for RKL, they were good, but they were original and funny, but they weren't. We had no idea. And so we played us our set, and I don't remember if it went over well or not, but then when they went on, it was just oh my God, they were huge. And this was at the peak of their 90s, 1993. So they were just starting to crest right there. And
right.
that tour, was a tour that our friend Will was with us, and he died while we were on the road. And Bomber, it was too much for Bomber, and he flew home. And we ended up in Barcelona with no singer, and we called Jason and asked him if he wanted to come out and finish our tour with us. And so he came out. He was totally strung out, and we went out to Mallorca, and he had to go cold turkey out there. But he did it, and we actually played a show in Mallorca. They said at the time that we were the only American band besides the Ramones that had played in Mallorca, and we played with this band called Cerebros Exprimidos, which is Squish Brains.
Mm-hmm.
And and then we came back to Barcelona and played another pretty ripping show that we kind of put together ourselves, us and the Subterranean kids. And then those guys went to Berlin and recorded that. I had to stay in Barcelona, but those guys went to Berlin and recorded the Testicle G and the Feel My Nut Posse recording. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you should check that out.
I will check
Everyone should be.
that.
Yeah. And so that recording was born out of that tour. And then, yeah, we had a really great tour after that. And we were all amped on the band again. And we said, we got to go home and we got to write another Rock and Roll Nightmare. And so that's when we buckled down and wrote the Riches to Rags record. And we had never done a record without Bomber.
Mhm.
And so this was challenging. You know, we had to make sure that we wiped the slate clean of Reactivate and made sure that this record was going to kick ass. And so
Yeah.
we got the guy who produced that record had just done an East Bay thrash band called Forbidden. And so he was used to super fast, tight music and tight drums. And he knew what to do with our music to get it to work. And that record came out pretty cool. And we toured that record, and we had a lot of problems with Jason's drug use and stuff.
Mhm.
And like on one tour, I remember we were all getting ready for this Euro tour, and I guess I had forgotten to tell Jason that we were going to Europe, so he didn't have time to detox off of drugs, and his girlfriend at the time was strung out too, so he brought her with us on tour and her kids. So we had 2 strung out people on the bus with their kids, and that tour was a nightmare.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
That was the European tour?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a recipe for disaster. My goodness.
Yeah. Damn. It's crazy. All the things that you've gone through. We talked to Fat Mike about a year ago as well, and we talked to him about this too. Like with all the stuff, with all the bands that you've been in and all the people you've played with, to still be kicking it and still be doing the punk rock thing, with everything you've experienced, the good, the bad, the ugly, it's pretty wild, like,
yeah. I mean, it's endless stories. It's just like, I wish I remembered more, But when whenever we're all together, like someone will bring up something, you're like, oh my God, yeah, that's right, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've been, so our friends are putting together this RKL documentary
oh, hell yeah,
called A Rock and Roll Nightmare. You can find them on Instagram, RKL DOC, and
Nice.
I think they're on Facebook, the same name. And they are hoping to have that out by the end of the year. And they have a lot of interviews with people, and
awesome.
And it's going to be pretty interesting. And they're trying to really piece together the story. It's hard, like to put all those things together in the right order. Because when I was trying to remember the lineup with the skate park and then what happened after that. And it's crazy how all these things came together for each generation, each version of the band,
Obviously, maybe you can, maybe you can't talk about stuff like this, but do you have plans at all to like record anything new or put anything new out?
At the moment, we don't have anything demoed, but we would love to. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should.
I think Fat would put it out, so that's pretty good foot in the door to have.
Yeah, you should. You definitely should.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Before we let you go, I want to ask you these 4 questions that we ask everybody. The first 2 are not music related.
But they're super
Are
important.
they Game of Thrones related?
No, I'm sorry. And I'm so sorry for you are way better looking.
Well,
so sorry, Chris.
When that photo was during that show, I had just bleached my hair too, so it pretty much looked like old man hair.
Yeah, that's right.
But it was hurtful to me because this is the first year that my hair started falling out, and so I was like, "Oh man, I really do."
I would never forgive myself if I did anything hurtful to you. So I'm so sorry. All right. This first question is: if you were on death row, what would your final meal be?
Probably I love a really good cheeseburger and French
Oh,
fries
yeah.
and a chocolate shake.
Fuck
Classic.
yeah. Perfect.
The, the next question is the most important question
Yeah.
of them all.
What is your favorite cereal?
Cheerios, non honey nut, just plain
Plain
Cheerios.
Cheerios.
Just
Wow.
regular
All
plain
right.
Cheerios.
Yeah.
All right. Gotcha.
Hmm.
Third question is if so they actually do this now. So if you were to be cremated, they could take your ashes and they could form it into a vinyl record of your choice. So if you were going to have your ashes eternalized in a vinyl record of your choice, which album would you pick?
Reactivate.
Fuck yeah.
No, definitely not. Probably the Surf Punks record, or no, the B-52s. What's the one with Rock Lobster on it? It would be
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
record.
Is it just self-titled? I think it might just be self-titled.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Gotcha.
I could be completely wrong.
All right. The final question is who is on your Mount Rushmore of punk rock? You get 5 people because you get a crazy horse too. So 5 people. Who would you put on your Mount Rushmore of punk rock?
Darby Crash,
Nice.
Sid Vicious, Joan Jett, the Ramones. I don't know which one. Joey, maybe.
Joey, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think he considered himself a punk rocker. He was just him. Captain
more.
Sensible.
Gotcha.
Is that 4?
Yeah, that's 5. That's all.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
And
Awesome.
and yes, the B-52's first album, the one with Rock Lobster, is just self-titled. The B-52.
Okay, good.
Cool. Well, Chris, thanks, dude. Thanks so much for doing this. We would love to have you on maybe a few months down the road to talk about Lagwagon.
Okay.
Matt and I are both huge RKL fans. I saw you in LA. How come you guys aren't playing? You could totally ignore this and I could cut it out, but how come you guys aren't playing the final No Effects show in LA those 3 days? I thought for sure RKL would be a part
Municipal Waste is on tour during that time.
of that. Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good answer. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right,
Acceptable
cool.
answer.
Yeah, totally. All right, Chris, thank you so much, man. And
All right, thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
Have a
nice
good
to
night.
meet you as well.
You too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care.
All right. It was awesome. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.
How do I do this shit? I can still hear you. So what do I have to press? Close.